Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. Alright, welcome to another Railway Empire video. This is Attican, and I think I've gotten Railway Empire fever. I dusted off the game to take a look at that new America map that they released, and in doing so, I put out a couple videos, and now I'm kind of enjoying the game and playing it again. So I thought we'd go back and take another look at the America map, because honestly, I wasn't sold on the map. What they've done is compress the timeline, kind of, months or weeks and years or months or however you want to look at it. But they've fiddled with the timeline, but it plays almost identical to, or almost identically to the regular regional maps. And so what? You have 1830 to 1930. That doesn't do much for me. I think that would be attractive to those of you who really like to build these big systems where you just keep building and keep building and keep building and have, every station hooked up and, two large stations in every city and warehouses everywhere and all that kind of stuff. And that's not what I'm into. I'm into solving the problems and figuring out how to do the scenarios and get the task list done. So I think that I'm not the target audience, I guess, for that map. But to be fair, let's go back and take another look, and let's do it as a time period of 1830 to 1850 rather than doing 1830 to 1930. So we're going to do one that'd be more like playing a regional map, and we'll do our usual settings, the least amount of money we can take, very hard AI competitors, and reduce ticket prices, and we'll do the Trickster, and we're going to do it in Atlanta for comparison's sake. So we'll start in the same place, we'll use the same character, same setup, but we'll have a different set of objectives in a different time frame. So let's see what we've got here. So what we see here is we've got to build a certain length track, a max length to Indianapolis. That will not be hard. Hooking up Oklahoma City, Atlanta, Indianapolis obviously will not be hard. We just have to make sure we go that direction. The four cities in hitting 40,000 in only a few years is we've got to pay attention to that one. It won't be hard, but we will have to pay attention. But this one has a lot of mail, big quarterly profit in mail, a lot of packages to deliver, and then over 6,000 passengers that have to go nonstop from Atlanta to Great Falls. So that's pretty good. So this one has a combination of mail, lots of passengers, big long direct line. So I think it's worth doing. So we're going to take a shot at it. And what I'm doing here is kind of figuring out how to get started. And I don't know what was the matter with me when I played this. I don't think my brain was engaged. I go back and check the objectives like 5 or 6 times. I mean, it irritates me. I can't imagine what it looks like to you watching it. But I should have just written them down, I guess. Maybe that's short-term memory. They say it's the first thing to go. So better watch out for that. So what we're going to do is start out with that direct line from Atlanta to Indy. So the way to do these when you have that limit is just measure them out in a as dead straight a line as you can get and figure out how much room you've got to work with. And that'll tell you how much you can bend the line, so to speak, to kind of avoid the big mountains or whatever. So we see that if we just go almost as dead straight as we can go, we still have plenty of room left. We've got like 50 to 100 miles of leeway. I forget the exact number, but it's plenty of room. But it's not enough to just go, squiggly line that goes all over the place. But it will allow us to kind of get away from that giant tunnel, and we'll eventually end up with a smaller tunnel right over here in this little pass here. It's not a pure pass because it's not completely level, but it is a much smaller, simpler way to go than trying to go there's basically 3 sets of hills there. You don't want to be ripping through all 3. So we're going to just kind of go through one of them, so to speak. And here I am again checking that number. I don't know how many times I do this, 5 or 6. And it's just, goodness gracious, should have written it down. All right. So, that's another one, repeating yourself. So I'm forgetting, and now I'm starting to repeat myself. So, All right. So eventually we'll get this thing straight. We'll have an easy connection, and the beauty of it is it's actually a beer meat line, so it'd be a good place to start anyway. Now, typically you don't start your build with a big tunnel and an expensive line, but you do what the tasks tell you to do. And so right now I'm just playing with it to try to get the cost down as best I can, and still have a reasonable line without any giant elevation changes or inclines in it, so that the trains can run efficiently, but at the same time I don't want to blow my whole budget on this first line. So we'll end up with something about like that right there, a little straightened up version of that, and connect it up to Indianapolis, and we'll be good to go. And of course, I'll have to go check one more time. There we go, finally. So our first task has been completed. And of course, if we're going to have a line, we're going to double track it, and we're going to run plenty of trains on it and make good money on it. And again, because it's a beer meat, it's the perfect start anyway. In our first attempt, we didn't quite get off that, make that first starting connection just right, but now we do. And we'll go ahead and extend it out and finish off the double track and put a couple of towers and the usual stuff, and we'll be off and running. Now we're ready to set up our line, and we're going to run 6 trains. It's a fairly long line, and it's a beer meat line, so it's going to be a good one for us. It'll make us a lot of money, and Indianapolis and Atlanta should both benefit and grow just from having this line. And of course, this is the first step in our rapid expansion strategy anyway, is to look for those beer meat lines and load them up with trains and get ready to go. So I'm double checking where I have to go. Maybe I should just take a picture of this objectives and print it out or something and have it next to my computer. But anyway, we're looking, and we've got this beautiful setup where we've got Indy is beer, St. Louis is meat, Kansas City is beer, and Oklahoma City is meat. So it's just perfect. Beer, meat, beer, meat, beer, meat. Just beautiful, beautiful. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to run out and make connections to all those cities. So this is a pretty long, it takes a while to do this one. So I'm going to fast forward right here. You don't need to watch me making the usual lines, but we're just going to make, like I said, the straight city-to-city connections, very vanilla, and work our way out to Oklahoma City. So let's fast forward a little bit. Okay, we've moved ahead 3 months in gameplay, and we're just finishing off that last connection to Oklahoma City. So now we're going to have meat in Atlanta, going to beer in Indianapolis, going to meat in St. Louis, going to beer in Kansas City, going to meat in Oklahoma City. So now we've already got our trains going, we've connected our stations, we've connected Oklahoma City. Now we've got to grow 4 cities to 40,000, or at least be connected to 4 cities of 40,000, and then we need to turn our attention to all those packages that we've got to get. So our next step in our process, of course, is to make sure that we're running cattle to all our meat industries and wheat to all of our beer industries, and that's what we're going to do next. Right now, we're just gathering up some staff that have come available, obviously, and we're assigning them to our trains. And some of the staff assignments, particularly when we get into the package mode and the passenger mode, become very important to us, or well, more so, and we need to be careful with how we do it, and we'll talk about that when we get to that point. Right now we're looking at the research. I've kind of forgotten this tree, I have to admit, and I do finally find that guy out there, the mail car, and I'm thinking it would be great if we could get out there pretty quickly to get that mail car to help us out with this next phase after we get this little mini city growth thing going. So that's where we want to kind of target our research. But right now, again, we're getting ready to go ahead and start our feeding these cities what they need. So, and we're really still finishing off this line. We're still finishing off that last line right now to Oklahoma City. And once that is done and we've got trains running on it, then we'll move into phase 2, which is feeding the cities, the wheat and cattle. And I hate to be a broken record, but it's just an important concept. It'll help you with your gameplay so much if you can get in this habit of getting these beer meat lines and then feeding the cattle and wheat in as appropriate. Because what it does, first of all, you're making great freight revenue on those direct lines that are going into the cities, the cattle line and the wheat line. And you're growing, you're shipping more wheat or more beer and more meat back and forth on your beer meat line. So that's revenue that you're getting. And you're growing the cities, which gives you more beer, more meat, more passengers, more mail. So everything's growing because you're doing this, because you're just taking these simple steps in a logical order, expanding your footprint and feeding the cities, and then watching your lines grow and taking advantage of that, shipping those goods, shipping those passengers, shipping those mail. That's why we run automatic lines. And you'll notice that's an important point here. We know we've got a mission here that emphasizes mail. Have you seen me set up any mail lines yet? No, you haven't. And I won't for quite a while, because the first thing I got to do is grow these cities. And if I tried to run passenger line, I think some people would have a kind of a knee-jerk reaction, I would think of it, to this scenario and say, oh, I've got to get that mail going. And they would just try to expand in every direction and run passenger and mail only lines, right? Like express lines everywhere. Well, you could do that, but what you'd end up with at the end of the day is a whole bunch of not very profitable lines, because your cities aren't growing, carrying not very much mail, again, because your cities aren't growing. It's more important that your cities grow to increase the amount of mail that's out there to carry than it is to have a bunch of express lines, passenger and mail lines running around emphasizing mail when there's no mail to carry. So the first thing you need to do is establish your own company's economy so that you have options. And that's what we do with this rapid expansion and what we're doing right now, feeding cattle into Atlanta. And then when those cities grow, that naturally takes care of a lot of your mail. Now, in this case, we have extreme mail requirements in terms of packages and particularly that quarterly revenue number. So we will specialize a bit coming up here. But right now, we're in a sort of a basic startup city growth mode. And regardless of whether we had to do passengers or mail or freight or some, company value or city growth or whatever, we would want to start similar to what we're doing right here to take advantage of the basic mechanics of the game. So that's what we're doing. We're going to set up meat into Atlanta. And now, again, I'm going to fast forward because all we're doing now is we're going to set up these lines that run. Like I said, we're going to run cattle into Atlanta because it has meat. We're going to run wheat into Indianapolis because it has beer, and on, all through all 5 of the cities. So let's fast forward till we get to the end of that, and then we can talk about the next thing we need to get done. Okay, so we fast forwarded another, about 4 months, and we're finishing up that last line getting cattle into Oklahoma City. And so that means we've finished, this will be the finish of our phase 2 of our rapid expansion strategy. And keep in mind now, we've done all of this in under 1 year. So it's December of our first year of operations, 1830. So before the end of the first year, we have expanded out. We have a network of 5 cities with 4 profitable meat beer lines running, and each city is getting wheat or cattle as appropriate to help it to grow and to grow our lines. So now we're looking at what do we have to do next, and we still have that challenge of getting that 40,000 growth. So what we're doing now is checking our growth, and our growth is a little disappointing. I mean, Indianapolis does great, but a little slower than I would like to see. So what I decide here is we need to give it a little extra. So just putting in the one good is not going to get us over 40,000. It'll get us up like 25, 30, but we need 40. So we're going to start adding a few more ingredients into the mix, so to speak. So we're going to grab windows of opportunity, basically looking for logs, corn, wheat, those things that all those cities need at the beginning, those basic fundamental things. And I've talked about this before, that logs, wheat, corn, beer, and meat, those 5 are the essential things that every city needs, and those are the ones you really should focus on in any kind of city growth. Even if you're growing very large cities, they still need those things, and they need more of those than any other item. So what we're doing here is looking for close by logs, corn, wheat that we can ship in. So here we found some corn very, very close to Atlanta. So we're just going to merge into this, the meat line, or the cattle line, excuse me, that we already have going into Atlanta, and run some corn into Atlanta, and that'll give Atlanta a little nudge to grow. So that should give it one more item that it needs. And then we're going to go look to see, well, what's our next city looking like. And well, actually right now I'm still looking at Atlanta. I'm not sure what a miracle I expected to occur there. Now we see Indianapolis has already hit 40. That's sweet, because it's already got a second industry. So what's going on with St. Louis? Now we see St. Louis is lagging behind a little bit. It's just not quite getting that 60. It needs a boost. It needs something else to help it out. And actually, what I'm doing here, I was kind of thinking ahead to what I might say on this video, and pointing out that the beer industry cities have a tendency to grow a little bit faster than the other industries, because the wheat is a double whammy. They get the wheat to satisfy the beer, but they also get the wheat to satisfy. They eat the wheat. Every city needs the wheat, whether they have a brewery or not. And the meat cities aren't quite as lucky, because the cattle, all it does is satisfy the need, the requirement for the meat. And you probably noticed that I had a stop there where I went back to the option screen where you hit escape and you can save the game or whatever. I left that. Normally I'd edit that out, but I left that in to remind me. That was a telemarketer. Don't you just love to get a call you didn't expect from a person you don't know, wanting you to spend money you don't have on a product you don't need? I just made my day. All right, so back to our game. So now again, we're looking at low-hanging fruit. So we've got logs down here that we can run over to St. Louis. St. Louis needs a boost. So we're going to run some logs into St. Louis. We ran some corn into Atlanta just a moment ago. So now we're going to run a line of logs into St. Louis. So we're just trying to boost these cities up a little bit and just kind of push them over that edge. I think one of the things that the developers did beautifully in this game, I've made comments about this before. These guys can do math. All these cities seem to, the city growth is such that they get right there 56 to 59% and they just stop right there. It's really, you've got to do something extra to push them over the edge and get that 60%. And particularly as you go, as each city grows, it needs more and more things. So you have to just keep kind of shoving something else in there, pushing it over the edge to keep it to grow. And that's why I love the approach we've been using with the 2 city clusters and the past 2 warehouses, because that just sets you up to put everything that a city needs to run it way up into 100, maybe 120,000 pretty easily. And it's a beautiful technique. Now, why aren't I using it here? Because 1, we only need 40 to hit our goal. 2, warehouses are very expensive to get in. 3, they take a fair amount of time to set up. So it takes you quite a bit of game time to just, even though you pause a lot of your building, it still takes you quite a bit of game time to set up a warehouse, set up the lines running through, and then run all the goods into it. And you're only building 2 cities with that, so you'd have to repeat that at least another time in order to have 4 cities. And there's not enough time or money to do that because we want to get our attention onto the mail problem that we have. Lots of packages and lots of revenue from mail. So what I'm doing here is really just kind of doing almost like exception-based building. So we've got wheat down here, and we're not sending wheat to Oklahoma City. It needs a nudge, so we're going to send this nearby wheat to Oklahoma City. The other thing that this is doing, the other reason we're doing this, it's helping us with our freight revenue, because we do have a freight goal here. We have to move a lot of freight in this scenario. And this is, every time we set up one of these are great ways to move freight. And they're cheap to set up. They're efficient. They make you good money. And as we know, the freight is not related to how far you run it. So the shorter lines are better. They make you more money. They make you the same amount of money in a shorter time, less expenses. And you can throw security guards on them and make an extra $800. So you're making that $16,000 that you get for your full load of freight plus $800 from the security guard. These things are beautiful, and so we're just going to set up as many of these as we can that are really low-hanging fruit. We're looking for windows of opportunity here. Again, logs, wheat, corn that we can run in. So we're going to keep doing this for a little bit. So let's stop and fast forward one more time, and until we get to the next interesting little bit, the next interesting thing that I want to show you. Okay, so we've moved forward about 6 months, and we're finding that while it's helping and we've got all those cities growing, we want them to grow faster because we want to finish this off. And now I'm thinking, oh, well, we have an alternative here. We have competitors. And one of the keys to this game, in my opinion, for playing with the competitors is think of them as an advantage to you, not a disadvantage. So we're looking at the larger cities that the competitors have, and we timed it beautifully by accident. I would love to say I did this on purpose, but I just happened to hit Toledo when it was opening for a new business. So I want to put that business in there and get the right one. And you're about to watch me make an unbelievable goof up here. Wow. But full disclosure, I got to show you my bad play along with the semi-good play. So what I wanted to do here is put a business into Toledo. And it wouldn't let me put the logging business, the sawmill that I wanted. And I thought, I don't know why, but my first thought was, well, I'm not connected to the city, won't let me buy. But then in the back of my mind, I knew that's wrong. That's not right. That's not right. It couldn't be that. And it wasn't. As it turns out, logging the sawmill wasn't available based on the year that we were in. So it hadn't come up available. It was showing up on the list, but had those question marks. See there, down there, that's got those question marks saying we can't build it. So then I said, well, okay, what can we build? All we've got are the four: meat, breweries, weaving, and clothing, or cloth. Well, cloth and clothing, I guess I should say. So I rather stupidly put a weaver in there because, that's the next one, and it made perfect sense. And I was looking at that cotton down there and said I can run it. And then I kind of slapped my forehead and go, oh my God, there's already a textile industry in Indianapolis. Why would we want a textile industry talking to a textile industry, so to speak? We don't. We want textiles supplying to a clothier. So I bite the bullet here and say, okay, I can accept that I made a horrible mistake. I'm going to demolish the building I just spent all that money on buying, and now I'm going to put what I should have put in there in the first place, which is a tailor. And now I've got a great situation because I can easily run cotton into Indianapolis, which I would want to do anyway, right, to feed that textile business. So we can make money off that cotton line. We can feed that textile business and have it ship textiles to Atlanta and St. Louis if we did nothing else. Now, if we hook it up to Toledo, which we will, then we're not only we've got 4 customers for those textiles: St. Louis, Atlanta, Indianapolis, and Toledo. And then Toledo will, of course, be a great customer because that tailor in Toledo is going to need a lot of textiles. So now we're going to be able to ship those textiles all over the place, make money on them. It wouldn't even be a bad thing to own, by the way. If we had a little more funds right now, we would own that. Pardon me. Well, if I hadn't messed up, if I had put the clothing business in Toledo right off the bat, instead of wasting, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars, we could have bought the textile business as well. But you got to live with your mistakes as well as your good play. So now we're going to feed cotton into Indy, and we're going to have a line between Indy and Toledo, and now we've got a beautiful little connection here. We've got Indy actually going out to in 3 different directions. I'm also looking at Toledo and saying, our good buddy computer opponent has failed to do what I think is the basic first principle, which is have the meat beer line. There's no meat going into Toledo, so we're going to fix that as well and go over to Chicago and run a beer meat line from Chicago to Toledo. So Toledo will keep on growing. We'll keep on shipping to and from it, and life is good. So now we're setting up the line to an automatic line shipping back and forth between Indianapolis and Toledo. And the other thing here that's great, and this is where it really helps us hustle up and hit our objectives, we don't have to wait for Atlanta, St. Louis, Kansas City, or Oklahoma City to grow. Toledo, our computer opponent and the natural way of things, took care of that for us. And now we've connected to a large city. So now we've got another in our 40,000 city in our list of attachments. So we're moving closer to, we're getting a good economic boost and moving much closer to our goal of having 4 cities in our network that are 40,000 population. So I'm going back and checking. Our original cities are all growing. That's good. They're all still growing. So we've done a good job giving them stuff they need. They just started out so small. So we've got Indy and Toledo, and we're looking where else can we go to get another one. And now we're going to do that beer meat line from Chicago to Toledo, which just makes sense. I mean, it should have been done long ago by our good computer buddy, because it would have been such a good line, such a natural line to make. I think that I saw they're going to have improved AI out there in the roadmap coming down the road. And if they do, I would love for them to think about a development method, you know. It'd be very pretentious for me to say use mine, but use something that would give the computer's opponents a method for building cities and building their business, so they would be more competitive. So if a computer opponent was designed to say, my capital city has beer, I want find a meat line. My capital city has meat, I want to find a beer city, and build that way, and then run trains appropriately to build that up. I mean, I don't think that would be that hard to set up. And you could even set up, there are multiple ways you can do this, multiple ways to play. I would love to see them take the computer opponents, instead of having them all kind of just have a little benefit, I'd love to see them have a method. In other words, you know, this computer opponent played with this method, and this computer opponent played with a different method. And on different maps and different scenarios, the one method would be better than the other in a particular map. That would be really cool. And I know I'm really talking about almost rewriting the game there. So I'm just talking out loud here. I'm not saying they should do this or have to do this. What they have right now is fine. It's a really good game. But I would love to have computer opponents that had kind of not personalities like Beatrix, you know, where she's obnoxious, but personalities where they have a method they like to use. That would be cool. So anyway, now we've got our beer meat going Chicago to Toledo, so that's going to be another good line for us. We'll feed Chicago eventually with some meat, of course. And keep on going. We're watching our cities. They're still growing, so we're looking good on hitting our 4 out of 4. And we're looking around to see what else is out there. And Pittsburgh actually turns out was the capital city for this orange dude. And so it'd be a great one to have. And then Washington's over there is a great one to have too. So I'm thinking, what would be the best way to get those two cities connected to our network? And I'll pause right there and let you ponder that thought for a moment, and we'll just watch the gameplay for a second. And here's an obvious answer, which is, you know, connect to Pittsburgh. Now here, I didn't like the orientation of that station. I wish it was flipped around the other way, but I'm making sure I'm staying far enough away from it so that it could still expand if I need to later on, because, you know, I'm thinking eventually that'll be my station. That may be my opponent's station right now, but eventually, no, that's going to be my station. And actually, by hitting Pittsburgh, that completed our 4. So that means one of our guys had to have grown. We picked up, so we 2 of ours, Indy and one other city, got to 40. And then we picked up Toledo, which is over 50, and then we picked up Pittsburgh, which was also large. So we are in great shape here now because we've now completed that task, which was pretty difficult. Once we get this line set, we're going to be ready to turn our attention to mail. So right here we see a market crier pop up, and these market criers are very important if you have a mail-oriented task list like this one or a passenger-oriented. You use those market criers to boost up your business. They're basically advertising. So our market crier is going to go out and tell everybody about how safe our line is, and that means mail is going to increase on our line. If we told him to go out and cry comfort, 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 then our passenger volume would increase. Either way, it's great. It's useful even if you don't have a mail or passenger objective, but when you do, it's crucial because they really boost up your the amount of mail. So for a while here, our mail carrying will go up quite a bit. And now we're just looking at, well, why don't I just buy this Doc Smith? Doc, he's sitting here right in my way. Why don't I just buy him and the reason I want to buy him is he's got these lines like Pittsburgh to Toledo, and he's got Pittsburgh to Washington, and I want credit for moving that mail and passengers, so I want to get him out of the way so I can do that. So I'm just looking right now to plan ahead to buy him. And then I see a nice little window of opportunity, nice little beer meet that we would want to do anyway, which is from Atlanta to Nashville. And they're going to basically pay us for it by giving us that connection bonus. So yes, we're going to take it. We're going to connect up Atlanta to Nashville. And we've done this one a couple of times now. This will be like 3 times we've made this line, so we know how to do it. We know how to curve it around and minimize the tunneling that we have to do and still have a reasonable line that gets us over there without costing us an arm and a leg. So that's what we're working toward. And we've got that nice connection bonus sitting there, so if I just go ahead and hit connect. Why didn't I like it? Oh, getting some money now. This isn't the first line we got our bonus, but we've got some money now. So we don't have to penny pinch that line. We can run that line pretty straight. So that's what I did here. I actually said, okay, forget all this curlicue stuff. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say curlicue. We should reserve that for that defect that I think they fixed. But we don't need to go flying around that to avoid that tunnel. We can just tunnel right through this mountain. We got the money, and that way it'll give us a straighter line. It'll make us more money because it'll be a faster delivery between the 2 cities. So that's the difference between had we built that line first, like if we hadn't had that requirement to go up to Indianapolis and we'd gone to Nashville first, which is kind of one of the natural ways to start this map from Atlanta. We would never have just gone straight through with that big tunnel because it's too expensive. But now that we've got some money, why not? So that's what we did. I'd actually forgotten I did that. But now we've got a beautiful straight line into Nashville. And if we're going to build Nashville, why not go over here and grab the beer meat line that we would have to Memphis? Why not? So that's what we're doing. We took our bonus, and now we're going to build the line that kind of implies, which is going on to Memphis. All right, so this is a good place for us to wrap up this episode. We have finished our first 4 tasks. We've got our 40,000 cities connected. We've got a really good economic footprint, if you will. We've expanded a little bit extra in anticipation of building up our mail business. And now we're going to turn our attention to the mail business big time. And we'll see that in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.